How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of The Paradigm Shift. Today, we talk about what happens when things don't go according to plan and how to deal with the problematic situation at hand. So, let's start by discussing how to dissect the situation and ultimately move forward with a better mindset alongside the help from a support system.
Today's quote reads, "Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it." That has so much correlation to what we're talking about today. And kicking off today's discussion, I'm just going to have to ask you to bear with me. This might sound counterintuitive, but let me explain. So, when something bad happens to life, something goes wrong, and you inevitably fall into a hole, you're going to feel negative emotions and have those effects of negativity. They're just bound to ensue. So you should be able to recognize those feelings and resonate with them. However, don't sit and sulk in them. There's a difference. It's one thing to acknowledge how you're feeling, and then another thing to stay in that hole and let those negative thoughts, negative feelings, and emotions keep you there. So then comes the question, how do you get out of that hole once you're in there? My first piece of advice is to slow down a little bit. Your mind is likely in that driver's seat of your life. So my biggest piece of advice is just to slow down, do some deep breathing, and collect your thoughts. That's when you can acknowledge how you're feeling. Maybe do something like journaling or talk with a friend, of course, when you feel comfortable. Then the second thing I recommend is make some sort of plan, which again is something we talk about way too much on this podcast, but it is because that is how you get from point A to point B. It's just a theme of life. So to get out of a hole, you want to create a plan. And I'm not going to lie, it's not going to be easy. You're still going to feel pretty bad and you're going to think negatively of yourself sometimes. But if you're able to map out each part of your day and cultivate those small wins, eventually you're going to start creeping out of that hole. And that's when new opportunities and blessings in disguise can ensue.
I absolutely agree with that. I think a lot of times we'll be moving at a certain pace and then things will occur unexpectedly. And if we just sit and sulk and don't look for the light of the situation and how to move forward in making a plan, you're going to lose the momentum that you had. Because even though you might be in a different environment, you might be in a different workspace or with different people, you still had everything that's internal about you, everything about your drive, your discipline, your motivation, everything. And if you just stop, then those drivers stop working in your direction and in your favor. You essentially lose your trajectory, even though you may have lost like a small aspect of your overall life. You can't let that deter you away from where you're trying to get to. And that's why it is important to not make any irrational decisions and try not to get too emotional and just try to understand the logistics of the situation. And I would say, like, one of the best ways to do this, as Sean mentioned, is just taking time to yourself to think and also have conversations with people and seek out advice. Don't seek out sympathy necessarily, but seek out advice because, in my opinion, advice is a lot more useful than sympathy, especially when people want the best for you and not just want the best version of you that serves them, as we talked about last episode. So, just to reiterate, slow down to the point where you're able to see things and you're not necessarily moving in complete slow motion, but you're able to understand the situation and not get too emotional or tied up with anything. But don't stop. Don't completely stop what you want and like where you're trying to get to. Try to find workarounds, talk to people, make another plan. Sometimes we make plans and we have backups in order to take care of these situations.
Another piece of advice I want to add, and this is dependent on what happens to whatever it is you're going through, but have the maturity to own up to what you did, the mistake you made, whatever went wrong in your life, because it's going to just become that much easier to work through because you're working through it and admitting to it as opposed to trying to go around it. This kind of correlates to the saying out there where if you live your life looking in the rearview mirror of your car, you're just going to crash. That's the same exact concept here. If you sulk in the past and continue to look back into the past, I promise you, in the present day, you're just going to crash and you're not going to get out of the hole you're in. As Michael was saying, it's very important to have intentful conversations with people. Slow down your thoughts, collect your thoughts, and then bring that to another person. That's why it's also really important to carefully select who you're bringing this info to, because you don't want to put it on to them, but you want their advice. And the best people around you, the people who want the best versions of yourself, will do that, as opposed to people who want the version that suits them best. They won't necessarily give you what's right for you. Maybe they'll just sympathize with you and try and mask how you're feeling, as opposed to bringing it to someone who genuinely cares about you. They'll probably tell you some harsh truths of life, but that's going to get you to where you want to go.
I definitely agree. I think when it comes to talking with people, some people might take that vulnerability that they see in you and use it as a chance to maybe get something out of you or to like step on you. But really, if the person cares about you, they will allow you to use them as a stepping stool to get back on track and not use you as a stepping stool in a sense of ego and to put you down and to like lift themselves up to make them think that they are much better than you. And I would hope that we already have people in our lives that would be a useful source of support in a situation like this. And if you don't, it's very important that you do try to find people. A lot of times they will be like older than us and wiser. And I think sometimes we look for people that are around our age to feel that they might understand us the most. But at the end of the day, I think it is kind of difficult to take advice from people around your age in some regards, and that you're better off talking to people that have been where you've been and not are where you are. Because it is much better to get advice about how to get out of where you are rather than have a conversation and get sympathy because someone else is in the same shoes as you. That won't really help you the most. And that can work against you. That can pretty much hold you down to where you are and just essentially start creating a victim mentality, like if you let it get to that, which is something that we definitely want to avoid. I think you have to really choose whether you want to be a victor or a victim. And if you let the emotions get to you, if you let the pity get to you, and like that is all you're seeking, you're going to be a victim. But if you can push that to the side after a little while of introspection and understanding these things and looking inward and having conversations with people, then you allow yourself the opportunity to find a victory within the situation. And in my opinion, that will always suit me better.
Another piece of advice that I have is the following. When you're in some sort of hole, rut, or overall life just sucks, that is because someone else or something else is currently driving your life and driving that car. They most likely crashed, and your headspace, your mental space, isn't in the right mindset. It's not in the right capacity. So that's another question. How do you get that back? A great piece of advice that I will give everyone is double down on the things you love doing. For me, and I've experienced this recently, it's going to the gym, it's getting up early, because I understand I might not be doing the best, but what I can do is get up early, have some serenity, calmness, and clarity in the morning, then go do the thing that I love most on this earth, go lift some heavy weights in the gym, and I'm going to be feeling that much better. And then by the time 7 or 8 o'clock rolls around for me, I want to keep cultivating small wins, because eventually that is what I was just doing. And again, I really want to reiterate that it's going to be hard, and this isn't an end all be all solution. But if you continue to persevere and do things you love and seek new opportunities, you are going to get out of that hole. I can promise you. That's why a tool like learning is so important, because when you constantly learn, when you constantly look for new openings, there's no shot that you're going to look in the rearview mirror or sulk in negativity. Instead, you're going to be focused on moving forward and using whatever happened as a stepping stool to greatness.
I'm with you on that. I think cultivating small wins will definitely make the bigger losses that don't come often, especially with the way that we have systems set up and the way we act and the skills that we have. Everyone listening to this, big losses will not come often. But when they do, as long as you continue to be who you are and cultivate those wins, it won't feel nearly as bad. I think this is a quote from the first Batman movie, Batman Begins. He says, "It's not who I am underneath, but it's what I do that defines me." And I think that is so important You're not defined by where you work or the people you hang around. You're defined by you and your actions. So, example being Sean, right? What he continues to do is what he was doing before. And those things are what makes him him. It makes Sean himself. And those are the characteristics that you would expect for Sean to still have, regardless of whatever environment he's in. So if you don't let some extracurricular thing that's outside of your control and isn't necessarily part of your day to day life or who you really are, if you don't let that impact you as much, the way you show that and move forward is by continuing to be yourself. Show that it hasn't affected you, but don't just tell people that it hasn't affected you. Don't put on a mask or don't try to hide it. Just do, just show. The more you try to put it past you, the more it will be past you. And then with the momentum that you have from your small wins and you being the person you are, you doing the things that define you, you're going to find your next big win real soon. And you're going to find yourself in the environment that you genuinely feel that you deserve to be in.
Again, to consolidate what Michael was saying, you want to work through things, not around things. Never in life do you want to try and avoid difficult things that show some immaturity, but instead, you need to have it within you to work through these things and walk through and embrace the pain, because that in life is how you grow. Here's my final piece of advice for you, and it's going to be pretty hard to wrap your head around, but again, bear with me. When you're in a hole, in a rut, and you really don't know what to do, I would say continue to express gratitude and count your blessings. Now, that might be hard to do to other people, given your headspace, but if you journal saying you're thankful for making it through the day, you're thankful for being able to still get up, have food, have a roof over your head, go to the gym, whatever it is you love, you're slowly going to, again, continue to climb out of that hole. That's why we're such big advocates for faith as well. Because if you're faithful, even in the darkest times, you will see the light at the end of the tunnel. And you know, whatever it is you're going through is really just a stepping stool to greatness. And with that said, thank you for tuning into this episode of The Paradigm Shift. We hope you've gained a better understanding of today's topic, as well as used some of our stories and advice to launch you into a healthier lifestyle. Be sure to tune into next episode, where we'll continue to discuss other topics relating to health, lifestyle, and last but not least, self-improvement. Stay mindful.